Welcome to Frontline Pages. The last two reviews were of state-of-the-art war machines of World War II, the B-17 bomber and the Cato-class submarine. Today we are reviewing a book about a plane which looked like a beefed-up machine of Great War heritage, but it earned its merits in World War II. Today we are reviewing Stringbag, the Fairey Swordfish at War, written in 2004 by David Ragg, published by Pen and Sword Aviation. The Fairey Swordfish took to flight on the 17th of April 1934 and ended its meritorious service on the 21st of May 1945. It took up its duty to fight the Axis forces and left the theater in silence when the enemy was vanquished. The crews of this plane called it the Stringbag, not because of all the wires and struts it adorned, but because of its versatility, you see. A string bag was a bag people used to go shopping with, and it could fit anything, hence the nickname. This carrier-based plane could nearly handle all types of ordnance mounted on the centerline of its fuselage, and it conducted a myriad of combat roles. It could function as a torpedo bomber, dive bomber, planting sea mines, and depth charging. Furthermore, the Swordfish could be used as a reconnaissance plane and for artillery spotting. In short, it could do anything in naval aviation except air-to-air combat. In spite of its looks, the Fairey Swordfish was an extraordinarily sturdy plane, and due to its low stall speed and foldable wings, perfectly suited for carrier-borne operations. Due to its low takeoff speed, they were also suited for flight operations on MAC ships. These were oilers and grain ships, which boasted a flight deck welded above the hull. Swordfish were launched from these ships for convoy protection, which resulted in the Swordfish sinking 21 U-boats during the course of the war. The Swordfish flew with a crew of 3 and was not only slow in taking off, it was slow in general. It flew at a maximum speed of 130 miles per hour, that is, without ordnance. If you slung a 1,610-pound torpedo below the centerline, the maximum speed fell back to a dismal 92 miles per hour. To give you an idea how slow that is, the early versions of the MU-109 flew at a maximum speed of 350 miles per hour. If the Stringbag encountered a fighter, it was almost always game over. The plane had one machine gun, which fires through the propeller, and one used by a rear gunner. The only defense the Swordfish had was turning. A skilled Swordfish pilot could turn the plane within its wingspan, thus outturning any fighter, but it was very vulnerable to the boom and zoom attacks of the ME-109. This plane didn't fly in the spotlight during the war, but would get on the edge of it on 2 occasions. The first occasion happened on the night of 11 to 12 November 1940, with a raid on the harbor of Taranto. Italy had declared war on Great Britain 6 months before, thinking that the British army was done for due to the failed campaign on the Western Front, which led to the evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force at Dunkirk. The British army was depleted of all its hardware it carried. It got its men across with the clothes on their backs, but everything else was left behind on the beach. At that vulnerable moment, Benito Mussolini saw his chance to restore Italy to former glory by declaring war on Great Britain and France, and conquering their North African possessions, which would make the Mediterranean Sea a mare nostrum again. But alas, he strongly underestimated the might of the British Empire in North Africa, and his armies were quickly shoved back into Italian-held Libya. And the French possessions? Well, they surrendered a week later to Germany and were able to keep their colonies under control through the ceasefire. Now, the Italian army didn't make much of an impression in Africa, but the Regia Marina, the Italian navy, was a force to be reckoned with. It consisted of 7 battleships and numerous cruisers and destroyers, and the British feared they would take control of the Mediterranean Sea, making resupply of the North African front untenable, which would have to be abandoned if control of the Mediterranean Sea was relinquished. The British prepared to plan for the raid on Taranto in pre-war planning, if a conflict with Italy would arise, and on the night of 11 to 12 November 1940, the stars aligned for the British Navy. A large part, including 6 battleships of the Regia Marina, was spotted by a reconnaissance plane to be anchored in the harbor, and the Royal Navy, being the only naval aviators capable of launching operations at night at that time, They did not wait around, and launched 24 Swordfish planes, all equipped with an auxiliary gas tank installed in the navigator's seat, to increase the range of the planes. The navigator took the seat of the rear gunner. Half of the planes were equipped with torpedoes, the other half with bombs and flares to light up targets. The first wave arrived over the harbor at 11 p.m. and dropped flares to light it up and bomb the harbor's fuel tanks. 3 aircraft came in low and torpedoed the battleship Conte di Cavour, blowing a hole below the waterline in the ship's side. Another 3 Swordfish plane came in from another side and torpedoed the battleship Littorio, hitting it with 2 torpedoes. The bombers of the first wave hit 2 cruisers who were moored in the harbor. The second wave arrived over the harbor just as the first wave completed its attack. They came in from a northerly direction and torpedoed the battleship Littorio for the 3rd time. They also torpedoed a 3rd battleship, the Duilio, which caused the flooding of the first 2 magazines. The British lost 2 planes in the attack. The Italian Navy had 1 battleship written off and 2 severely damaged. These were out of the war for 6 months. But more importantly, the Italian Navy was reduced to a fleet in being, and never truly threatened the Royal Navy again. This attack was so well executed that the Japanese Navy analyzed it thoroughly, and it became the foundation on which the Japanese built their surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Half a year later, in May 1941, the Swordfish would again rise to the occasion, this time to challenge the great German battleship Bismarck. The Bismarck and the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen tried to break through the naval blockade of the British Navy to raid merchant shipping in the Atlantic. They were spotted several times in Scandinavia, and 2 British battleships, the Prince of Wales and the Hood, were dispatched to take care of the Bismarck threat. This led to a naval engagement in the Denmark Strait. The Bismarck and Prince Eugen engaged the Hood, which got hit in the main magazine, resulting in a catastrophic explosion. Only 3 of the 1,418 crew members of the Hood survived. The Prince of Wales retreated, but the Bismarck was damaged by 3 shells of the Prince of Wales and was forced to abort her raiding mission. Due to the damage the Bismarck sustained in the engagement, she was forced to make a run for the Channel ports on the French coast for much-needed repairs. This resulted in an all-out effort of the British to engage the battleship, so she would never make it to France. On the 26th of May, 2 Swordfish strikes were launched from the aircraft carrier Ark Royal. The first couldn't find the battleship, but the second strike did, and it hit the Bismarck with 2 torpedoes. 1 torpedo hit the rudder, permanently jamming it in a 12-degree angle, thus forcing the Bismarck to sail in circles. She would not make it to France. Immobilized, the British engaged her from all sides, and 13 hours later she was resting on the bottom of the ocean. Their last significant mission happened on the 12th of February 1942. 2 German battleships, the Gneisenau and Scharnhorst, made a mad dash through the Channel from Brest in France to the home ports in the Baltic Sea. 6 Swordfish took off to intercept the battleships, but they were in turn intercepted by 15 Me-109s. None of the Swordfish made it back, and 13 crew members were killed in this debacle. They were at last outclassed by the enemy. As the war progressed, so did newer models of planes reach the fleet air arm, and the Swordfish was slowly being transferred out of carrier-borne operations. Their main theater of operations became the Atlantic Ocean. This ancient-looking plane was actually one of the first planes which was equipped with air-to-surface vessel radar, or ASV radar for short. This way they were superbly equipped for hunting U-boats, and due to their slow takeoff speed, carriers didn't have to turn into the wind to launch the Swordfishes off their decks, so they could keep up with the convoys at all times. So, this is the end of my review of Stringbag, the Fairey Swordfish at War, written by David Ragg, published by Pen & Sword Aviation. This book was a very interesting book because I didn't know anything about this plane at the time. If you want to know everything there is to know about the Fairey Swordfish, I would recommend this book as a must-read. If you enjoyed this review and want to see and learn more about military history, you can like, share and subscribe. Thank you very much for viewing.